host, Danna-Gift. Today's episode is going to be about how quickly life can unravel before you and how you can gather that moment and use it as your strength rather than allow it to consume you. Basically, how to keep your cool when life is tossing shit at your face and you think it's shit, but it's actually really chocolate. But that's it's all perspective, and that's a really horrible analogy, but I'm just going to go ahead and roll with it. And I'm going to save myself by introducing you my guest here, Joey Dentici.
Hello.
Joey Dentici is from New York, which I'm actually not surprised because you actually give off very New York vibes. Does everybody tell you that? Is that
sometimes?
Okay.
It used to be a lot more prevalent.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have an accent?
I used to have a really deep one.
Really? I can't hear it anymore.
It's kind of gone now.
When you go to New York, is that a thing?
You can hear it a little bit. If I drink a little bit, it starts coming out.
Okay. He was a Long Island police officer, and while he was working as a police officer, he built a 6-figure network marketing business that allowed him to leave his career as a police officer as the youngest to ever retire from Nassau County Police Department. And from what I hear, this is actually one of the best departments in the county. In the country. Holy shit, that's even better. They didn't even know how to handle your offboarding process.
Yeah, we had no clue how to process any of the paperwork.
So did nobody ever leave that country? The county?
No one ever left the country. No. No one, not that young. Like, it just never happened. Because it's like a lottery ticket type of job, so, yeah.
Damn, so how long do you think the lifetime is for those police officers that stay in?
30 years.
30 years. Oh, shit.
I mean, it's one of those police departments that you want to stay for 30 because it's such a sweet gig that you can do that. Like, if you work in New York City, it's brutal.
Yeah.
So people are like, 20 years, I want to get out. This one, it's like, no, I have all this time off. Like, I'm getting paid really good. So people want to stay until as long as they possibly can, pretty much.
Most people don't leave, but Joey found a way to. And after exploring different avenues in entrepreneurship, he landed on Enagic selling Kangen machines, which is a water purifying system and a very expensive one at that.
Yeah.
And then you started a team and went off to travel the world speaking on many different stages, which is, again, super cool. So eventually him and his partner created Conversions, a coaching company where they helped over 150 people to see success in their high ticket offers and services. And then that gradually developed into an even higher ticket consulting business that really, really scales them. So he's also partnered in I Believe in You, which is a tech and apparel startup. It's a bracelet with an NFC chip that can be scanned, and when it's exchanged, you can show the lineage of where it's traveled. It's given to friends, families, strangers in order to spread belief. The app is currently in development, and we're going to see that sometime February next year.
Yeah, it'll be launched in February or March of next year.
We're super, super excited for it. I feel like we've been all kind of anticipating it here. But it's cool because you get to basically see your kindness spread, and it shows how much impact this one bracelet does. And while all of that is developing, he's still consulting in Digicast marketing, where he helps B2B to generate thousands of hyper-targeted leads, and still consulting with the other companies. And really, I don't even understand how you have time to breathe. You guys are crushing it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So not only that, Joey's also a good friend of mine. I swear I just know the best men on the planet because I have nothing but highly spoken words to describe you. He's the kind of guy that you can kind of chill on the balcony with, have some good, deep, insightful conversation with. Super cool, collected. If you guys are on the audio version, you can't see him, but for the people who are watching, you can totally tell. You have like this cool, like,
just chill,
mystery chill dude vibe going on.
I've got that before. It's funny.
Yeah, well, it's like a demeanor, but it's a cool thing.
Yeah.
People are like, I want to know this guy. And you guys are about to get to know him. So he's highly intelligent. His personal life is thriving as well. He's a soon-to-be first-time father with his lovely girlfriend, Brittany, who you will see in the high version, which don't judge. She's not smoking, guys. She's just going to be here to hang out and watch us get high. And she's about to pop, in January?
Yeah, less than a month.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Are you scared?
No,
not scared.
Okay.
Excited.
There's some nerves.
If you're feeling scared right now, let me know if you'd like some advice.
Holy shit, my computer is literally listening to me. Stop it.
Siri, we're okay.
Here's some information.
No, Siri, stop. Oh, wow.
That's funny.
Okay, that's creepy. My computer wanted to join in on the podcast. We're going to go ahead and dive in to the conversation. I'm super grateful for you being on this podcast, and we'll just go ahead and dive right in.
Thanks for having me.
First off, I want to know why you even got into policing.
Yeah, it wasn't something that I was always I want to be a police officer. It wasn't one of those things. It was more so I was trying to figure out my way, and I was thinking about military, I want to go into the military potentially. It was kind of just like, I found that really interesting. And then my dad, he was in law enforcement at the time, and he always used to just tell me, take these tests like to apply for the police department. And if you want to do it down the road, I was like 17. He's like, if you want to do it down the road, the worst thing that'll happen is you have an opportunity that you can say no to. So I just said, yeah, that's fair. So I took all the tests, NYPD, all these different police departments, and pretty much when I was 20, I got contacted by the police department that I ended up working for.
Oh, they contacted you?
Yeah, I scored really high in the test, and
wow.
They were pretty much like, hey, you're 20, you have to be 21 to do it, but I did all the screening and all that kind of stuff passed. And then once I got that letter from them of like, we want you to work for us, I pretty much just like turned a switch in my mind. I'm like, this is what I want to do. Always found it interesting. My dad, he did that as well. So it was already in my head a little bit, and yeah, and then I just said, you know what, I'm going to commit my life to this at that point. And I thought that's what I was going to do forever.
What were you doing before it again?
Just random. I was I had a county job working for parks, just like random shit here and there. It was like right after college.
Okay.
And then I just decided, I was like, this is what I'm going to do. And I did love it. It was a lot of fun. So.
Was the training really difficult?
It was challenging. It wasn't anything crazy. I was young, I was in shape. I thought it was fun. All the cool shit I'm learning, how to drive cars at high speed, this training, that training. It was challenging physically for sure, but more than anything, I think it was just a really amazing experience.
Okay.
It was 7 months long.
Okay, well, what made you develop a 6-figure networking business while you were in the police department? Were you tired of it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think probably when I was around 18 years old, I started reading books. Like, at the time, it was like stocks and real estate.
Dang, it took you a while to start reading books. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I know, right? I was slacking a little bit.
I'm just kidding. I didn't crack open my first book until 21. So.
Yeah, so I was just reading a bunch of books. Yeah, stocks, real estate, all these different types of books. And it always fascinated me, but I never really did anything. I mean, I set myself up in a Roth IRA when I was like 19, and I was like, I was dabbling. And then when I got in the police force, I had a little bit more money. And I just had that itch of like, I need to start a business. So I tried some things here and there, but ultimately I came across an advertisement one day online, some guys, with a marketing opportunity, and I went down the funnel, the rabbit hole, and I ended up doing it. And that was the network marketing company, Danna-Gift, that I ended up joining, and that's kind of how it started. And that was my first taste of real, somewhat, decent success at the time. Making 6 figures that was like a huge feat for me. But yeah, that's kind of how it started.
But I want to get more into the relational stuff. Obviously, what you've done is great, but I want to hear more about this stuff and the work that you've done internally, because I feel like that is really important for the listeners to hear.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your last relationship. So you've been single for 6 years before your current relationship. Yeah. Explain your last relationship, how that ended.
Yeah, so, there was like 2. There was like my first girlfriend ever I ended up dating for 4 years. And then after that, I had another 3-year stint on and off, not like official, like that's my girlfriend, but we had a very good connection. But the first one, that was like high school, it was like a young, it was my first probably love, right?
Yeah.
And, it was really good. It was very messy. Just like the high school drama.
Like it always is.
It was just like, it was one of those things. But it ended up it just wasn't a good fit, it ended up becoming toxic.
Do you think you just outgrew each other, or was it like you guys were arguing all the time?
In the beginning, the first 2 years were really good. And then it was just, it just wasn't the best way I could describe it is it wasn't a good fit, and our personalities were kind of clashing. And I had nothing bad to say. It was my first experience. It showed me a lot of things about myself that I didn't even know, in terms of my emotions and handling them and what healthy looks like, all those things I learned. But it was pretty brutal at the end, I guess. I mean, to my standard now, and at the time, it didn't seem like it was that crazy. But now looking back, knowing what healthy is, it was horrible.
Was it like a amicable breakup, or did something bad happen that ended it?
We got to a point where we broke up the first time, and once that happened, just lines were crossed in terms of shit we were saying to each other. If I could remember, it was so long ago. So we broke just kind of those initial lines, and then we broke up once, and then there were just things that happened. I don't even know if that would probably be a whole podcast, the high school drama that went on.
You gotta talk about high school loves.
Back and forth of breaking up and being together and trying to make it work, and we're gonna change. I'm gonna, all that typical
Yeah.
stuff. But it never did. And then one day happened, and I don't even recall if it was her that was like the last breakup out of the five.
Last straw, yeah.
That wanted to end it. It might have been her. And I was like, yeah, I completely agree. Like, what are we even doing here?
Yeah.
And that was the last time we pretty much ever like talked.
Wow.
Like it was
So
a
there
month later.
nothing
She
else.
contacted me, I think, and at that point I was already like, I'm out. Like, I'm done. So I was turned off, like, moving forward.
Well, do you feel like that because of the back and forth of that relationship, do you feel like that is any kind of reasoning of why you were single for so long?
No, not really. At that point, I had been with her for years, 3-4 years or so. Learned a lot about myself, and then I was in I had met somebody after that that I had a really good connection with, and that was the one that went, on and off 3 years. Really only good things to say about that. Taught me a lot about myself. She was a little bit older, so she taught me a lot about just myself and like the world and like traveling, and she got me into traveling and all this kind of stuff.
Was she in a Nagic?
No, I was completely separate.
Okay.
And then I ended up ending that, not for any bad reasons, but I just realized I was not ready for a relationship at that point, where I didn't want that one in that way necessarily. There was no hard feelings or anything like that. So that kind of just cordially ended and faded. And then I guess after that, I just had a different set of standards for relationships and for how I conduct myself, for me and my partner, how we work together. And I just never found the person, and I never settled. That was the big thing, is I had many connections along the way that had potential to be a girlfriend or a partner, but it just wasn't the one, And the one, I don't think there's the one, but like, it wasn't the right fit that I was looking for, and so I never settled, and that's why I ended up staying single. I would talk to somebody for 2-3 months, it was going really well, and then it ended. And then, that happened again, and again, and again, and again, but I never saw it as like, oh my God, what's wrong with me? It was like, oh, it's just like not the right person. Cool. Like, that's one step closer to the next person. I was purpose driven, so I was always working towards something. So I was never like unhappy alone, where like I need to find somebody. I kind of just let life play out and got myself into a better position with business and my mindset, my personal development, and just built my character as a man over the years, and that kind of landed me here. Yeah. Okay,
so a relationship was never really like your top priority. You really just focused on yourself, and then you trusted your gut when those things didn't work out, when those relationships didn't work out.
Pretty much after that first relationship, and really the second one, I was so focused on myself. If it came up and it was awesome, beautiful. If not, I don't really care. I'm going in this direction. And then towards the end of that, before I met Brittany, that was when I started being, okay, I've done a lot of work. I think I want to put some focus on this. So I started journaling about it, the woman I want, and I felt like I was in a place where I could really focus on that, and I was craving it. I was like, I want to share life with somebody, So I started putting more intention into it. There's actually a crazy story about that, but then I ended up meeting her, months later.
Okay, so you did a lot of work in between that time, but it wasn't until you actually made that decision and started really putting heavy intention into the woman you wanted that you actually found Brittany. Around the time, while you're doing that manifesting, basically, how long do you think it took from when you started putting the intention toward it till you found Brittany? Was it like a long time?
Yeah, so it was on the back end of, I had connected with somebody else, and it was really good, and it was like, that's kind of potential. And then it faded and it went away, and that's when I was like, I sat in that for a little bit, and like 2 days later I was like, I completely trust the universe. Like, it's just a stepping stone. I'd say probably like a week or two after that is when I really started journaling. I think it was the beginning of 2021.
Okay.
And I journaled about it. Probably, it wasn't every day, but I did it with like a lot of detail, maybe like 3, 4, 5 times in the beginning half of the year. And then I met her in September. So probably like 6 months or so after.
Oh, wow.
And it was funny because after I wrote all that stuff out, like the last time I wrote something about it, after I did that, I just remember I completely let go. Like I wasn't like trying for it. Like I pretty much forgot about it, and then it happened like a few months later.
So you like journaled it and then put it away and then just gave it to the universe.
Yeah, and I mean it was to if you look back at my journal entries, it describes her.
Wow.
Like I shared it with her, and I was like, "Holy shit, this is scary."
Yeah.
She had some journal entries too that described a man, and it was me.
Yeah.
Which was crazy.
That's cool. I feel like Dylan and I are the same.
Yeah, and we didn't even know each other, so it was crazy.
Yeah.
We met through a weird, yeah.
Yeah, actually tell us about that story. So I wanted to ask, as far as yours and Brittany's story, like how did that develop? Because I know you guys met a long time ago, and you like did life without each other, and then you found each other again. So explain how that all happened.
Yeah, so I actually never met Brittany before. I knew of her because she was in the network marketing business as well.
Oh,
so
okay.
she knew of me because I was like I trained the community, so she saw me in videos and stuff like that, but I never met her. She was in a relationship for a while.
You were like an Enagic guru.
Yeah, I was like a mini celebrity. Goodness, back yeah. But yeah, so I knew Rebecca. And I hung out with Rebecca a few times as friends.
And Rebecca is Brittany's best friend.
Yeah, and then long story short, I saw on Instagram that Rebecca was coming to Arizona with like a few of her friends. Brittany was one of them, and I saw they were staying in Arizona, and I lived in Arizona at that time, and I was like, "Oh, hey, what's up? You're in town? Like, I'm here. If you guys need any place to go, like, let me know. Blah blah blah. Well, maybe we'll hang out, all of us." And then I ended up inviting her to I think it was Braxton's birthday party, one of our good friends' birthday party, and that's where I had met Brittany for the first time.
Wait, hold on. You met, so Braxton had not the freaking music video that he had, right?
No, in the Carter pool.
Oh,
okay. It was like a pool party, yeah.
Okay. Braxton is one of our good friends, and you'll see him on another podcast of mine, that he had some like music video or something, and that's why I met Dylan.
Oh,
and so I was about to say,
yeah,
you were there too.
Yeah.
I did not know that. That's how trashed I was. Anyways, that was a very interesting time of my life, but it's not about me right now. I was about to say I thought you met her that same day. I'm like,
how
did that happen? Okay, so let's go back to some of your time and your singleness, because I think this is where I really want to dive into your mindset and the development that you did outside of the relationship. When you were doing that, were you dating at all during, like, aside from those little stints, were you like consistently dating, or were you more so if it kind of presented itself maybe?
Yeah, I would have I feel like I would have seasons.
Okay.
Like there would be times where I was so focused on business and just personal development and reading and the habits and all those things, and I wouldn't even care about women or finding women or anything like that. And some would come in here and there, whatever, but I was never looking for it. And then there were seasons where I was maybe more active in it, where I was going on dates, meeting people, stuff like that. But it kind of fluctuated like with where I was at, I guess, internally and with business. But it was never like, this is what I did the whole time. Sometimes I was active, sometimes I was in the dungeon working on myself, on my business. And that just kind of came in waves, I feel like.
During your single times, would you say you got lonely at all?
No, I don't think so. There were times where I desired a relationship where it would it would flare up, and I'd be like, it'd be nice to have a partner. There were even times where I'm like, am I gonna meet the person?
You barely questioned it, or was it like something that was that a question?
Once in a while it would come up, because after having these different connections and then it not panning out, I'm like, is that person out there? But then I, very quickly after, I'm like, no, dude, you trust the universe, like, you got this. That was very fleeting thoughts, but for the most part, I had community. I had people around me that I was always in rooms that excited me in general, and I was always meeting new people, getting involved in new friend groups, that are at the next level. So I had community around me a lot, so I wasn't lonely, like I wasn't isolated.
Got it.
So I didn't struggle with that really too much.
Okay. Well, when you were dating, would you consider yourself a player during that time?
Not
I guess
really.
It would be important to define what do you see as a player.
I mean, when I was a little bit younger, I definitely had a little bit of a tendency to I just had that little edge, you know what I mean? That in my head at least.
The bad boy edge.
I always, I have that like you said, that mysterious. That was kind of my player kind of stuff, where I was a little bit more reserved and I wouldn't.
So that was part of the game.
It was almost not intentional though. It just was kind of how I operated. So I wouldn't give people too much in the beginning, but at the end of the day, I always treated women well. You know what I mean? I respected women. I was nothing but kind to everybody I've encountered. Any relationship I've ever been in or any connection I've had, like it was all never bad blood, because I tried to stay, with an integrity and just being a good man. But there were times where I had a little twang, but nothing
so
crazy.
When you stopped dating these girls and like stopped going on a date, did you lay them down gently? So you said you treated them kindly. Did you actually like communicate with them why you didn't want to continue seeing them, or was it more of like a let's just let this fade into the darkness kind of thing?
It was both. Some of them were more revolved around like a communication of like, I don't think this is going to work out for these reasons, and proper communication. Others, they just mutually faded out. So like, I didn't need to say anything, the other person didn't need to say anything. It just, we both kind of knew it wasn't the right fit. So it was both. Some of them, it required some communication and upfront, talking about it. Others, it just kind of fizzled out.
You said you did a lot of work before meeting Brittany. What did that work look like for you? How did you prepare to be ready to be in a relationship, I guess?
Yeah, it's looking back in hindsight, I don't know if I had the intention of like, I'm going to become the right man so I can have this amazing relationship. It was more so, I was just focused on growth, like as a man, not like to result in anything necessarily, just because I'm like insatiable for growth. Like especially then, I was like beginning of my career, like I'm fucking amped up, meeting new people. So it was just a lot of reading, a lot of podcasts, a lot of just fucking replacing all the shit in my brain with new thoughts, new ideas, new beliefs. And I mean, I was like a very meticulous like learner. I still am.
Yeah.
Where I would listen to the same audio 7 times and take notes and then go back and read the notes and highlight the notes. And so like a lot of the stuff that I think now like I burned into my brain because I wanted to think that way. So a lot of that, a lot of events that I, investing in mentors and doing these things. And I would consider the connections and the people that I met the women I met along the way as growth as well, because you can only grow so much as an individual. You're put to the test when you're in a relationship or you're communicating with another woman, because now all of the triggers and the things that you don't experience when you're not with a woman are coming up, and now you have to face them and see if all that personal development stuff worked. Right?
Yeah.
So that also I think was a part of my growth is, seeing what I like, what I don't like, what qualities in a woman do I like, what don't I like, what will I settle for, what will I not settle for, what's, all of those things help me build my preferences towards women. And then along the whole way, I'm, just growing as a human being, elevating my mind, getting my business right, and all of those things I think cumulatively were all factors.
Okay. Well, since you've been with Brittany, what do you feel are the habits or the things that you learned were not true? So what are the things that you thought were going to be applicable to the relationship that you had to actually readjust?
Good question.
Hope that's not a confusing question.
Before I met her, I was so ready, without even like I just internally had this like posture of like, I know I'm ready, like to be in this, in a relationship share my life with another human being, effectively. So I had the internal confidence about it because of all the work I did, but I think the biggest, belief around relationships that I had to break, and it didn't necessarily happen with her. I mean, it did, but like, that wasn't the epiphany moment, I guess, or maybe it was, I don't remember. But is I used to think that for it to be a viable relationship, like this person is the one I'm going to spend my life with or anything like that, that it had to be fireworks from the start. Wow. That was my experience, the first, few deeper connections that I had. And so if I didn't feel that, I thought it never could work that way. If I don't feel insanely attracted to you instantly, then it can't work. And so that would lead me to not giving things chances as much as I normally would. But as I developed more, I learned that it was more so coming from that doesn't equal a healthy partnership necessarily. It could, but it doesn't have to.
Yeah.
So I had to change that outlook, because anybody who I wasn't instantly like gravitated towards, like, and super attracted to,
Yeah.
you know, within a day or two, like, it was like a write-off for me. So I changed that before her, but I had to kind of rewire that where I was like, maybe I'm not thinking about this correctly. Like,
I mean, I definitely relate to that because I feel like I was kind of the same way, and it led me into some not so great dating worlds and scenes and people and yada yada. But do you think that that's because, did you watch a lot of rom-coms or anything, or was it like a
I'm sure it was
stigma?
influenced by media and stuff
Yeah.
to some degree. And
Yeah.
just my experience, you know, my first relationship was very, very emotional and intense. Same, the second one was even more so. So I was comparing it to that. And I'm like, if it's not like that, then it can't work.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of, I think, where it came from.
People can get addicted to the intensity of a relationship. It's an actual addiction,
100%.
which is very sad. But I can easily see how you can get trapped into that
Yeah,
addiction.
because it's like you're emotionally like, this feels really good. So like,
Yeah.
like it's hard not to follow it necessarily, but a lot of times, not in all cases, because I don't obviously know, but it could be very toxic because
Yeah.
with the high highs come the low lows.
Yeah. Did you ever hear about the people say that the emotion or the chemical release of anger is similar to that of love? They're actually like on the same level. Do you believe that?
I haven't really thought about it. I think they do very different things to our body,
Yeah.
and they create very different outcomes.
Yeah.
But I think
Yeah, for
the
sure.
intensity is probably somewhat similar.
Do you think that that's why people enjoy makeup sex? Because it's like a combination.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
it
just a
brings you
bunch of
closer.
emotion.
You know, me and Brittany have talked about this.
Yeah.
Because we've never, the path we're taking, I'm going off a little off your question here, but we've had conversations about this because our connection was not fireworks. It was slow and gradual. It was always felt amazing and it always felt right, but it was not like, oh my God, she's the one. I was a little bit more apprehensive because I've already been through a lot of stuff. So I was just a little bit more like taking my time, and it wasn't fireworks. It was very stable, which can be weird if you're used to it being crazy in the beginning.
Right.
You know, and that's what I had experienced my whole dating career, so to speak.
Dating career.
But we've talked about that because when you argue and fight, emotions come out, right?
Yeah.
And then that person is seeing you in that emotion, which brings you closer. Because if you see that person in real anger and real frustration and all these negative emotions, right? That's, again, you know, if it's you have the high highs, you have the low lows. So if you see somebody in that vulnerable state, it brings you closer. You're like, okay, they saw me angry, they saw me, you know, frustrated and not my best self, and they still love me. And that's what it's like. It's a magnet, I feel like, sometimes.
It's like
But
an
for us,
acceptance thing.
we've never really had anything like that. We've never experienced a legitimate, like, never yelled at each other, none of that stuff.
You guys have never, damn it, that was one of my questions. You guys have never yelled at each other?
No.
Have you seen the hole downstairs from Dylan punching it?
I've had plenty in my past. But,
Dylan's a little hot cake.
But
He's a
yeah.
little hothead.
no, we all are. But yeah, so it's different to navigate, because we don't want to go there with each other. That's the big thing, because we know where it leads to, and it might be to get to deeper love and deeper vulnerability. It might be a little bit longer because we're not exposing ourselves to these extreme emotions.
Got it.
Because we really are not willing to go there with each other. It's like, I have seen what that does in the past when I, you know, cross lines. It's hard to retract those things, you know, so we're very delicate around that. So we understand that, you know, we're taking the slow, steady route instead of like the fucking highs and then the lows and then, you know, you're good for a bit. Like, we want to avoid that. And it works good for us, so.
Do you feel like there could be more passion at all?
I mean, I think with extreme emotions, for sure, you know, but I think we're getting there more and more every day. And it's continuously progressing and getting deeper and more vulnerable, but effectively and without toxicity.
Yeah.
You know?
That's
So,
the most important part.
Yeah.
Gosh, I don't even know what that's like. I feel like Dylan and I, we have good conversation after some of the blowouts, but some of the blowouts are like, they're fucking intense.
Yeah.
Have you questioned if you wanted to continue the relationship with Brittany at all?
No.
Really?
Mm-mm.
Can't say the same.
No. I've
But
never
obviously
even
with
thought
two
of it,
different
really.
people. Yeah.
Because it's very different from anything I've experienced. And it had to do with where we were both at when we met, you know, all these different factors. And, you know, I had years of personal development. She had years of personal development. She's been doing all this stuff for years. She was just in a poor environment, and then when she got out of that environment, all of those amazing things that she had done the work for, now she's in an environment where she can thrive with me because it's not toxic.
It's like growing in the right soil now.
For sure.
Okay. Brittany was in a fiance, right? She was
It
about
was
to get
serious,
married.
yeah.
How long was that prior to you?
I don't know exactly. I think like they had been together, like officially, maybe like a year or so before.
Okay.
It might have been on and off a little bit after that, but I think it was about a year. I'm not positive though.
Is there any part of you that was like that questioned her getting into a relationship quickly after being married?
It crossed my mind, for sure. But I would say, the only reason it came up for me was just because I've been involved in stuff where the other person had a past that was still
lingering
a little bit.
Yeah.
And it didn't turn out well for me, so I had a little bit of like internal anxiety that I expressed to her like very cordially. But other than that, I've been fine with it after we've communicated about it thoroughly.
Okay, it's nice. So it seems like you guys have a pretty good, even keel, like good paced relationship.
Yeah.
Which is not what a lot of people can say. Obviously, like my relationship is completely different. But do you think that can result in a better, like healthier relationship overall? Do you feel like overall, if people could take the slower approach, that it would be more beneficial for them?
It's hard to say. I that works really well for us, and I've experienced both. I like this way better, but I don't think it's to say like that doesn't work. If it's more emotional and it's not as slow and steady. I think I'm sure there's cases out there where people thrive in that environment. So it's hard to say. I personally like the slow, steady approach better.
Okay.
Just because it's like, I don't think that love is everything in a relationship. Like in a partnership, I don't think love is, me and her both don't even see that as the number one thing. Like we see respect as the number one thing. So it's like love is cool, and like the high emotions and the low love, all that stuff is powerful for passion and all those amazing things, but that's like one part of it, the way that we view it. Like we see respect as first. So like love without respect, it's not gonna work. It's a horrible partnership. So we try to, our big goal is we try to maintain respect for each other. And if we can maintain respect for each other, if you think of anybody in the world that you really respect, how do you treat them?
Yeah.
If I look at any of my best friends, if I look at anybody that I truly respect, there's no, I don't fight with them, like we don't get hostile. I don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And so we really harp on respect in a relationship, and we try to maintain that, and I think that's really helpful.
That's cool. And you mentioned earlier you don't believe in the one. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
I don't think, I've just always kind of had that idea of like, I don't think like there's one person out there, there's only one person in the world that I can meet that's going to be a perfect match. I don't think that. I think that, there's plenty of people.
Yeah.
And it just depends on, who you are and what, frequency you're vibrating, who you are as a person, based on what you're going to attract. So I don't think, and I think that a lot of people, and ultimately, I don't know, right? Other people, who the fuck, I don't know. I'm not the universe.
About these things, yeah.
But I just believe that, and I think that's a big reason why I was able to move through all those connections I had so swiftly, is because I didn't have a scarcity around love. I wasn't scared to let go of somebody because they're the only person for me. I was able to move on because I know that somebody out there will be the perfect fit for me at this moment, and that'll be a lifelong partnership or not. And then I can find another person. So I think that's a big reason why a lot of people struggle to leave things that are toxic, is because there's a scarcity around love or finding that person, because they think only one of them is out there, or it's this really limited supply. There's fucking 8 billion people on the planet.
Well, I guess I wanted to dive more into how quickly your guys' relationship developed.
Yeah.
So you literally how long did you guys date before Brittany got pregnant?
How long was it? Maybe 7 months, 6 months?
7 months. And you guys were not, well, okay, explain the livelihood of your relationship, because you weren't actually together physically for like the first 3 months.
Yeah. Yeah. So started off, we met, first time we met, like, I obviously thought she was attractive, but nothing really happened until, for some weird reason, 2 weeks later, I had my birthday, and I just invited her out. Like, normally I would have just texted her friend, because I knew her, I didn't really know her, but I was like, intuitively, just like, ask Brittany to go out. So I invited her to my birthday, we hit it off there, and I was a little drunk. And then the next day I invited her to spend my actual birthday with me, and it was just me and her.
Wow, so your first date was like your birthday.
Our first like actual date where like we were like both sober and like, you know, it was fun, was that day. And I think that just spoke volumes about the interest I had. I didn't know exactly what was going on, but I'm really interested in her, and I want to spend my birthday with her. So I did, and then I think we hung out another time or two. And then she went to Africa for 3 months.
Right, okay.
So the first 3 months, we weren't even, you know, technically dating at that point. We were still getting to know each other. But I think that was an amazing experience for our relationship, because we had to learn high-level communication. Like, we could not continue to keep the interest building and the, you know, all of it going if we weren't great communicators. So we were forced to really fucking communicate. You know, typing long messages and explaining all these things virtually and through FaceTime. And then by the end of it, we were like just insanely excited to like reconnect again.
Yeah.
And then that happened. She came home, she flew to me, spent a week with me in Arizona, went back for Christmas, and then came back and never left. And then I think maybe 4 months after that is when Jackson, was it conceived?
Conceived.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even when she came back from Africa, you guys basically lived together almost immediately after. So, story behind this, a little bit of context, you guys. Dylan, my boyfriend, and Joey lived together. And during that time, Brittany came back, and then Dylan basically moved in with me, and then Brittany somehow took over the lease basically with Dylan. And it was like, you guys moved quick.
Yeah.
Well, I guess technically we did too, in hindsight. But obviously, you guys are pregnant. We're not.
Yep.
Do you think that the reason this was all fast-tracked was because you guys were ready for the baby? Like, there was the development that happened prior to?
Yeah, I mean, I think we stepped into the relationship, like, very mature. We both have strong boundaries, strong values, and those values aligned, our worldviews aligned, and all the writing on the wall said this is a great life partner for both of us. So we were definitely ready. And I think that's why it just progressed so fast. And at the end of the day, it's like the whole like living together too soon or like this too soon. It's all societal bullshit beliefs.
Right.
It's like what matters is what does the health of the relationship look like? If we're living together and it's amazing, who gives a shit if we moved in within the first month or in the first year? It doesn't matter. So everything was going really well, like surprisingly well. We're like almost like waiting for the shoe to drop. Like,
you're like, what the fuck?
It's like where is this? Is it supposed to be this good?
Yeah.
And so just it progressed, and obviously with the pregnancy that, you know, wasn't necessarily planned, but it happened and we embraced it.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like you embraced the pregnancy fairly well. Had I been in your shoes, I would have freaked the fuck out. What was Brittany's response when she found out she was pregnant?
All the things, shocked.
Did she cry? Did you guys cry? Did any of you cry?
She might have a little bit, just out of like shock. I think ultimately what grounded us the most was that we knew we were the right people for each other and that it was going amazingly well, and there's no reason to believe it wouldn't go that way based on how developed we are as humans, always looking to consistently grow, and we just aligned in so many areas. Like, so that was like a grounding, that grounded us of like, this could be way worse. Like, we were with the wrong person and that happens, it could be fucking devastating.
Yeah.
But we both believe we're with the right people here. I'm with her, she's with me. And so that was like very comforting.
Okay.
And that's what allowed us to embrace it, like, well, I think.
Fairly easy. Did you have any, I don't know, like second guesses or anything when you had a moment to yourself?
I experienced all the emotions. I experienced every emotion you could think of, probably. From excitement to nervousness to holy shit to grieving my past, right? Knowing it's not going to be the same.
Yeah.
And so did she. And they're all completely normal. You know, I've read plenty of books on fatherhood and parent and all that kind of stuff. Not in full. I've browsed through them. I'm not going to sit here and say I've read 30 books. But I've done a bit of research, and I understood that all these things are normal and they're okay.
Yeah.
You don't have to be so fired up from day one. Like it's going to look different for every man, from every woman, depending on who you are, of how you're going to handle that.
Mm-hmm.
But typically, as you progress through the pregnancy, you start finding your way of like, really now you're just excited. For the most part, obviously there's some nerves and stuff, but
it's probably what you're gonna have to do once Jackson's actually born and stuff. It's not like you could read all the books in the world, but you're probably not gonna fully understand it until you're in it.
Yeah, for me it was like shocking at first. More so as my brain went to every, like, it just like played in front of my eyes, where I'm like, just nothing will be the same, you know, it's going to be just a completely different life. And I grieved my past, where it's like, it's not going to be in this way ever again. And I came to terms with that. And it was just a fun journey, of uncovering how I feel about it, moving through it, getting out to the next, you know, phase of emotions.
Before we dive any more deeper, let's explain how Brittany got pregnant, because it was a very interesting way. So it was almost a decision from you two, but I'll let you tell the story.
In terms of what specifically?
Like, how did Jackson get conceived?
Because
it's like, yeah, well, you put the baby in the vagina.
Yeah.
No, but it was discussed that you were going to come in her, ejaculate, I guess. But what was the story? So you obviously know that that's what happened. Like, you get a baby, get ejaculated.
Yeah.
But the whole thought process, what happened?
Yeah, so we weren't really planning on it. So that happened. I ejaculated in her, and we ended up taking Plan B. Well, I didn't take anything, but she did.
So you knew, or the decision was, I'm gonna. It sounds so weird.
Yeah.
Ejaculate, come, whatever you want to say. You both decided that, and that the decision was to take Plan B, and just did it happen? Did that decision happen during sex, or was it like prior to? You're like, today I'm gonna come inside you, girl.
I think we were very just like wrapped up in the moment, weren't like completely thinking clearly, and I think a part of us was like, I don't really care.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because like we knew like we really loved each other, and it was so good. So like part of us was like pushing the waters almost like unconsciously.
Yeah.
And so that happened, and then she took Plan B, and it didn't work. And he's a little miracle baby.
And so why didn't it work though? So you guys did the research after.
Yeah.
Why didn't it work?
So apparently, if you take Plan B when you're ovulating, it doesn't work.
So I feel like I had no idea.
Some variation of that. I don't know exactly, but it was something like if you're at this point and it happens, it's like it can't do anything.
God, so you really have to understand your body as a female.
Yeah.
Like, don't just go out there and let men do all that inside of you if you're not wanting to get pregnant.
It's crazy though, because now it's like, just the whole sentiment, the mindset has changed so much from like when we found out till now. It's like now I couldn't even imagine any other way.
Yeah.
Like, we were even talking about, I was like, God forbid something happened where like a miscarriage or something. It's like, we would try again.
Oh gosh, yeah. We don't want to.
And I hate to even say that, but it's like we were in the mindset of like, now it's so normal and part of our life that it's like we would try again.
Yeah.
You know, whereas before we didn't even consider we were ready necessarily. It happened, and we got ready instantly. Essentially.
Yeah, I feel like both of you embraced it really well. Diving more into that about the thought process, and this might be, and I didn't even ask you if this was going to make you uncomfortable. You said everything was on the table. So, you are essentially a very healthy man, a viable gentleman, right? And a distinguished gentleman you are, and you're heading places. With the launch of IBIY, everything happening, and just your character in general, you know that you're going to be huge, millionaire, multimillionaire. We don't know, but because of that and how quickly it all transpired in the pregnancy, was there ever a point where you felt like maybe, I don't really know any other word to say this, but do you feel like maybe she trapped you because like the whole Plan B thing and like not actually knowing and stuff like that?
No.
No. Okay.
No, not at all. It was very joint co-creation. That never really crossed my mind.
Cool. Okay. I feel like there's some people who can see from the outside perspective and see how fast-tracked it is and then just be like, well, I don't know.
Yeah, no, not even a little bit. It was just super authentic and real from the start, and it just happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was, so no.
Jackson's your act of love.
Yes, he is.
We can't wait to see when he's actually here on this earth. It's gonna be really cool to enter him. When is the exact date of when Jackson's supposed to be here?
January 6th of 2023.
January 6th. Do you think he's gonna come sooner? I feel like just because your guys' life has just been like that,
He's
like
gonna
fast
come
track, you think he's gonna come sooner?
I don't know why we both kind of feel that.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be like a few days earlier, or even like very, very end of this month.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Oh, this is another question. Sorry, I'm backtracking now. Did you guys have signs of like possibly baby, like that she was going to get pregnant before that whole incident, before he was conceived? Did you get signs or symbols, or did you have some weird feeling? Because I feel like we do in very subconscious ways create our reality, whether we're aware of it or not. So did you see any signs or?
I think there might have been some weird things that were happening, and it was interesting. We went to Oregon to visit her family. I met them, and we were in her bedroom, and we were actually, for some reason, we were picking out names for kids. With no plan.
Really?
Like, we're gonna have kids. Like we came up with Jackson.
Yeah.
And if it was a girl, it'd be Brielle.
That's a pretty name.
But
too.
if I remember my timeline correctly, she was actually pregnant during that time for like a week or two, and we had no idea.
Wait, what? Explain.
So it had happened. Like we conceived, and then like we went to Oregon after that.
Oh,
we didn't know. This was like a week later, so we had no idea.
Good. Wow.
And we went and we picked out names, and like I don't know if that was like us unconsciously like knowing or feeling that. I have no idea, but that happened, and all these different weird things happened where like her brother had a kid, and her family visited us here in Arizona, and they were at the store one day and getting some gifts for him, for the newborn coming, and something happened where her dad put her arm around Brittany. He's like, yeah, we're just waiting for this one now. But she was actually pregnant at that time, and we didn't know.
Wow.
So just like these weird things happened after she was technically pregnant, but we had no idea that she was pregnant. We found out like a couple weeks later.
Yeah. Goodness. That's so crazy.
Yeah.
I feel like the world or the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, the energy out there really feeds us.
It's magical.
Yeah. Okay, well, in what ways, so going back to what I was talking about originally, since you didn't feel like there was no trapping, there was no ulterior motive, there was nothing like that, in what ways were you very sure that Brittany was a fuck yes?
I mean, every way, I suppose. You know, it just everything from our communication to one another, our respect for one another, the feelings we had towards one another, as this was evolving, our worldviews and our values were very, very, like, it's the same. So the way we see the world, the things that we value are the same, which is so important in a relationship. If you're not aligned with your values and your worldviews, it's going to be very tough. So just like every factor was like, yep. And we just kept learning these things over, talking to each other and dating, of just like one thing after the next, like, yep, we align there, yep, we align there. And, at the end of it, it's like, we align pretty much all the areas.
They're very crucial areas. I'm sure there's things that you don't agree on. What are those?
There's really not many, I'll tell you. And that comes back down to the way we see the world is so similar. So we don't have too many things that we're not on the same page with. I mean, we're very different people. Her and me are very different, but it works in harmony. So there's not too many things that like big topics that were like, no, I see it this way, I see it this way. I can't even remember any, like if any.
Can you remember the last argument you guys had? I
can't off the top of my head. We don't even like to call it arguments. We call it discussions. But I mean, we get frustrated at each other here and there, but nothing ever really lasts more than 30 minutes, an hour.
So more like just trivial things, like small things?
Yeah, just small things.
Maybe, or...
I can't even think about it. I mean, with her in pregnancy too, there's a lot, she's experiencing a lot. her hormones are going crazy. I'm, adjusting to all the things going on with my life and her being pregnant and baby coming. So sometimes we just get frustrated with each other, and usually it's a lack of us communicating effectively that leads to us getting frustrated, and then we get frustrated for a little bit, and then we actually just communicate properly, and then it resolves all. But even going back to what I was saying before, is even in our arguments, so to speak, there's a lot of respect. Like there is, like I've never raised my voice at her, and she's never raised her voice at me. I've never called her any names. She's never called me any names. Never cursed at her. She's never cursed at me. So even within the frustration, we both are like, it's just like you have a choice in every moment to like, just dig the hole a little deeper or like cross a line or not. And we just try to never do it.
So how do you yourself prevent, because there's obviously got to be some heat whenever those discussions, arguments, whatever you want to call them, come up. How do you keep yourself grounded and centered?
So, I mean, we've also shared a lot about each other, like with each other about things that like I try to help her understand more about me, and she tries to help me understand more about her, so that I can understand where she's coming from, and she can understand where I'm coming from, things that bother me, things that bother her. And we try to just avoid them because we're genuinely on the same team here. So we kind of talk about that a good amount of like just getting to know each other better and like what makes us tick, what doesn't. So with that said, I think the biggest thing I would say, I mean, it comes down to the individual, of course, it's pretty much for me, it's like my biggest thing is like I can feel whatever I want to feel, but I don't want to communicate from this place. So I can feel frustration or anger, but I'm not going to communicate through that emotion, because the only thing that's going to come out of that emotion is more anger or more frustration, because I can't see clearly right now. But if I just have some space, so we're very open to, when we're getting frustrated with each other, to allowing ourselves to take space. I think, I don't know, maybe a couple weeks ago I got frustrated at something, and she saw it frustrated me, came over to me and said, "I'm sorry, I apologize. Like, if that frustrated you, I want to give you a little bit of space." And I was like, "Yeah, that'd be nice." And then she went upstairs, 20, 30 minutes later, I'm feeling better. I'm like, now I'm in a place to communicate. So then I went up and talked to her. And then we're talking on a very stable, good ground and emotion and just good communication, because we're not wrapped up in all these emotions. So for us, it's allowing the space amidst the emotions if needed. And for me personally, I can't speak for her, but it's understanding. For me, I really believe like what I say, I can't take back. So if I'm angry, I'm going to communicate through anger, and it's just not a good look. It's not going to do anything positive for the relationship, and I can't take it back. So that's what's in my mind all the time. Like, if I'm feeling anger, fucking feel it, dude, but don't communicate through it. And so I try and just sit with it before I actually talk, and I just say enough to where we can maybe take some space, and then we communicate when we're on a good playing field. Our minds are right.
Okay, so it's just as simple as saying, "Hey, I don't think right now is a good time to communicate about this. My feelings or emotions are heightened."
Yeah, and like, it's nothing against you, like, but I think this would be better if we just take a little bit of space, get ourselves together, and then come back and talk.
Has there been a point where you haven't effectively communicated like that, and what did that result in?
Yeah, there's been times, and then we just go back and forth in frustration for a little bit until we're like, we're not really getting anywhere.
Yeah.
This is not productive. So
I fucking hate that.
It's just annoying.
It's like an endless cycle of just we're literally saying the same thing
in different ways. Like, you just keep saying, it's like, you need to understand it. So you say it in 7 different ways. Like, so we're pretty good now at like understanding, okay, like this is not getting anywhere. But again, I think for both of us, we're so it's so important to us to not cross boundaries and breach the respect that we have for one another. Because the first time, which I'll never do, but the first time you say, "fuck you," or like, that's just a little, you're just moving the boundary a little bit further, right? Or you're pushing the respect back a little bit. And now that's open. And maybe it doesn't happen again, maybe you never say it again, whatever, but you went there.
Yeah.
I don't want to go there. So I just try my best to not go there, and whatever I got to do to not do it is what I try and do.
How do you do you have like anger bouts by yourself?
I would say nowadays it takes me a lot to get angry. Like I'm a pretty even keel guy. I don't really care like about things that don't matter. Like for the most part, like I'm not an angry person. So if anything, I've never been angry at her. I've never been like truly mad at her ever. I've been frustrated with her, right? She's been frustrated with me, but it's usually never like true anger or like I'm fucking pissed at you. Because we haven't crossed lines, right? So there's nothing that's truly worthy of real anger that we've done to each other. But I mean, for me personally, my biggest, I'd say, challenge is expressing my emotions. So it's not that I have too much emotions, it's that I want to express them more to her, to be seen more, to be more vulnerable. So that's a work in progress for me. You know, it's something that I've had for a while. I come from the police background, I've always been kind of even keel, so like for me it's not about suppressing it's not like I need to come down from the anger, it's like I want to feel more. So it's kind of the opposite, where she's a big feeler, I'm more stoic.
But you said before you used to have like anger spots. Do you feel like that has gotten suppressed through your own personal development?
I just didn't know how to control my emotions. And then once I started rewiring my mind, the things that used to get me angry or trigger me just don't trigger me anymore. I'm like, how was I ever fucking triggered by that? Because I've done so much reprogramming around the things that they're irrelevant to me. Like the things that used to piss me off, I giggle at now. Like seriously. And that's just from like just consistent repetitive learning and reprogramming. So most of the things don't bother me. And the things that truly bother me are when you disrespect me or you embarrass me. Those are two things that fucking piss me off.
Okay.
That'll bring up anger, but she doesn't do that with me because we both have that understanding. Like, I'm not going to disrespect you or embarrass you. We never want to do that. So we don't go there. So I'm not put in situations where I get like furious. But for me, I think the biggest thing is I try and do it intentionally. But when I cry is when I become softer and more emotional and I express more and I'm more vulnerable, which I want to be more vulnerable for her and show up, more connected to my emotions. So I like to periodically, if I can, and usually it has nothing to do with our relationship. It's like I'll just go alone and I'll try to cry.
I've done that before.
And I'll like things that like my grandpa passed away and I have letters from him and his stuff and that was a huge loss for me. That I grieved, but like I still feel it. So like if I'm feeling like I'm suppressing emotions or something, I let myself release, and then typically I'll see like the next week or so, like I'm just way more open. I'm way more vulnerable, I'm way more open, I'm way more playful, and all of those things, like I get less hardened when I let myself cry. So I try and do that like every so often when I'm feeling that pent up, emotion in my body.
So that's a goal that you're working towards.
Yeah, and I'm still, I want to, it's, for sure. It's hard for me, like I haven't cried in front of her. It's very hard for, I think, any man to cry in front of a girl. But it's almost something I want to do because it unlocks a different layer of vulnerability. And being seen in that state as a man by a girl is very difficult. Yeah. So that's something that I want to do and let myself do.
Do you feel like the even keel thing, and I know we're coming up, we're already past the hour, but that even keel thing, do you feel like that is a personality trait, or do you think it's something that was developed because of how much you've trained your mind?
That's a tricky one. I think it's both. I think part of it is for as long as I can remember, I've had a pretty even-keeled disposition. Got it. I mean, even when I was younger, my dad would tell me stories of like, my grandpa would be sick and he'd be coughing up blood and like crazy shit would be happening. I'd be like 10 years old. Everybody in the house is freaking out. I'm like, everybody get out of the room. I'm like, call the ambulance. You're going to be fine.
You're very
Everything's
logical.
Okay. We'll figure it out. And I always used to be that kind of rock, amidst all these, emotions flying around the house. And then I became a cop, which again, you have to learn how to control and regulate your emotions. When you're driving fucking 100 miles an hour to a shooting and you're like, I might get in a shootout. Yeah. You can't be freaking out or you're going to make stupid decisions. You have to calm yourself down. So I learned to regulate my emotions through that. I think I had a little bit of a disposition for it. But at the same time, I think that part of it was probably from childhood of like not being able to express my emotions enough. That probably comes into play. So it's a delicate dance between like owning this is how I am, because now it's like an affirmation statement of like my identity, this is who you are, it's just how you are. Well, that's like, I don't know if that's healthy, because if I'm accepting that, then I'm probably missing out on a lot of emotions that I want to experience. that, you know, I'm suppressing because of how I am. So I try not to, I used to do it a lot, but I try not to now say like, that's just how I am about anything really, because I don't want to affirm something to myself if it's not something that is, I want to stay the same forever.
Yeah. Because you're constantly changing.
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
So it has its pros and it has its cons. The cons are I can't experience life as vibrantly as I'd like to all the time. And I've made a lot of progress, but I don't feel crazy highs, but I also don't feel crazy lows. So the win is that something crazy can happen and I'm like, all right, well, what's the solution?
Yeah.
Right? But that means I also don't get to experience like pure bliss. Right?
Interesting.
It's like, you go the lower you go, the higher you go. So I'm more in the middle. So it's really good for situations like responding to in a relationship or crazy shit's going on. I'm calm. But then if I want to experience more gratitude and more love and open my heart up more, it's a little bit more difficult coming from that place.
So that's more different type of development that you're gonna have.
So I'm trying to balance that now and like work on that.
Interesting. I don't think I've ever met anybody who's wanting to, well, I guess Dylan in some ways wants to also feel more joy in certain things because he also struggles with like pure laughter when he's watching things or, you know. So we are here finishing up the last hour. I would like the listeners, the viewers to have a really good takeaway, like a solid, I guess more an advice on what to do in order to stay pretty calm in situations, especially for the men out there. How if you could give, you know, some simple steps or maybe just different recommendations of how to stay pretty even keel, stay like not allow their angers or emotions to control them, what would that be? Yeah,
so that's a good question. In terms of like controlling your emotions, I think the biggest thing is that emotions are normal. Like you're gonna feel emotions. You're gonna get angry, you're gonna get frustrated, you're gonna feel all of these things and you don't necessarily have control over it, you know, but you control how you respond. And so that's all I focus on. Is like I completely 100% control every single fucking word that comes out of my mouth. So that's on me. And if I'm feeling these things, just sit in it. Just like chill out before you respond. So controlling your responses is huge. Even if you're feeling all sorts of crazy shit, just like not talking will probably serve a lot of people. You know, just like, dude, I just shut up, right?
There's power
just
in
feel
silence
it,
for sure.
just feel it and go through it. And that's in a relationship for me. I try to control my responses because the response you have when you're angry versus when you've calmed down is completely different. And I always want to have that response. So I do my very best to do that. But outside of relationships, for me, it's like, I mean, obviously all the reprogramming of like the work I've done has helped tremendously. Repetition has been huge for me of like concepts or beliefs that I want to learn or adopt. It's crazy repetition. Like it's not listening to a book, it's not reading a book one time, it's not listening to a podcast one time. It's like when I latch onto a concept of the type of man I want to become or a belief I want to adopt, I am like fucking viciously learning that.
And like, do you do one concept at a time, develop that, and then pick up another one? Or is it like multiple concepts that you're kind of like, all right, all this is going to encompass who I'm going to be?
I'm usually fixated on one thing at a time for the most part.
It's like a hyper-focus.
It's like I just get really into it. Like, I want to become that person, or I want to adopt that belief, and then I just go ape shit. Sometimes it's just one specific video I watch of like a really good podcast that I will watch 7 times to where I can literally recite the podcast to you. Because that's how much I learn it. And now I know it so well, it's like becoming my default response. So that's been big for me. And then the last thing I think that I always kind of play in my head is that like, who the fuck cares? It's like we're on Earth, on a rock, it's spinning who knows how fast. Somebody knows, not me.
Some scientists.
and it's like, nothing really matters.
Yeah.
Like for the most part, like obviously the most important things matter, but all the shit we're always caught up in doesn't matter. It's like long term, it doesn't matter, and I've ingrained that belief into my head. So that the small shit, like, I don't care. If somebody cuts me off, I literally don't care. I feel nothing in my body because I don't fucking care. It's irrelevant. I'm okay. We're all good. I'm still driving my destination. It's all okay. So that's a replaying thought in my head of like, at the end of the day, does this really matter? No. And like now it's become like autopilot for me. So like I don't even have to think about it. Just like that's usually my frame that I come from with almost like any scenario. unless it's like really like important, you know, like someone gets hurt or whatever. But
yeah. Okay. The last question. I know I said that the last time. So I know that what we were just talking about, the goal that you're shooting for is to actually feel more joy, more emotions. What steps have you taken at this moment to start achieving that?
Yeah, so I think for me, a big part of it, I think, and this is not like my doing necessarily, but I think having a child will crack me open. And I'm really excited for that because I know it's going to open my heart so much.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to become a giant softie.
Yeah.
And so, like, that alone is going to do a lot. But currently, I'm going to be hiring a coach soon. But it's really just putting myself in positions where I feel very vulnerable that scare the fucking shit out of me.
So forcibly putting yourself in.
Forcibly putting myself, and even just the little moments I know where, like, I'm not communicating, I'm not communicating about my emotions, I'm not letting myself feel this. I try and be conscious of it so that I can actually express how I feel. Like, even, I mean, recently, like, I've gotten more emotional about things. And I think part of it has to do with becoming a father, but just my eyes start welling up at certain things. With movies, I'm just getting a little bit more sappy, and I'm communicating more openly with her about my feelings. But outside of that, I'm looking to, next year, I'm looking to do a 3 to 5 day darkness retreat alone.
Ooh, what is that?
It's pretty much where you sit in a room in the mountains somewhere in the pitch black for 5 days.
By yourself?
By yourself. There's like a host, but they don't talk to them. They just bring you food like when you need
I was
food.
about to ask, I was like, what about the food situation?
Pitch blackness, and you're just left with your mind.
Holy shit.
And all of your emotions, and it's like comparable to like crazy drugs, like DMT, like the shit you're like, at a certain point in the retreat, you're hallucinating. Like, everything, you're in a black room, but now everything's light and colors and shit because it's just crazy. So I want to sit with myself in that setting and feel everything that I've suppressed because I have nowhere to go, I have no distractions, I have no phone, I have nobody to talk to, it's just me and myself. So I'm going to do that. And just stupid things that make me feel uncomfortable. I don't do it perfectly because it still makes me uncomfortable, but just random shit that I know is scary for me.
Like what?
For example, like dancing. I hate dancing.
Oh,
And it's because I'm vulnerable. Like, if I look stupid dancing, then it's like, fuck, like, what is everybody, like, you know, just like that specifically, it gets me.
Yeah.
So that is just stuff like that, like different things I know about myself that, like, I don't like being in that position. Yeah. That's what I want to attack.
Interesting.
Because I know on the other side of that, it's just like all the things I'm wanting. So, yeah.
Damn. Okay, guys. Well, thank you, Joey, again for being on this podcast with me, especially with the baby being along the way, like in literally a couple of weeks. She's here. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, he's here. So thank you so much again for obviously just being a good friend, cool guy, and being on the podcast. Thank you for listening, and we will have another episode with Braxton Kilgo next week, and we'll see you there.
Adios.